Welcome, everybody, into another episode of the Transform Recruiting Podcast. I am your host, Brad Owens, and with me today, I've got a special treat. If you wanted to know what's hot in the tech space, we've got the person to talk to. This is Mr. Kevin O'Neill. Kevin, thanks so much for jumping on.
No problem. Great to be here. Thanks, Brad.
So, before we dig in, I want to make sure everyone truly understands where you're coming from, your background, and get a solid understanding of you yourself. So, why don't you fill us in?
Okay, well, I'm the technical research director at Staffing Industry Analysts. So, I guess my sphere of influence, or what I look at, is technology that's deployed in the staffing industry, particularly front and back office technology and any associated platforms and the kind of ecosystem surrounding that. I had a previous life as a CIO, so I've had probably close to 30 years in IT and within the staffing industry. So it's been quite a long and interesting journey.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, it sounds like everything that I nerd out about, you get to do on a daily basis. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit different when you have to work on it and get it all into production than nerd out about it. So I kind of, I guess I walk a middle line,
Yeah, sure.
it being in love with technology on one side, and then going, okay, well, I've got, I've had to keep this technology in place and going and delivering a return on investment. So it's a fine line to walk.
Yeah, sure is. That's excellent. So I know that recently you have put out a couple different research studies. So we can talk about those and hit off the highlights just because I feel like everyone will get a whole lot of value out of that. So, what's the most recent research that you've published?
Most recent research I published as an update to 2021 a global landscape report on front office software used in the staffing industry. So
Okay.
I published that initially in 2001 and then did an update late last year.
Okay. So it's always helpful for me at least, and I know folks that are listening to define what we mean when we say front office. So just so that everyone has a shared understanding of where we're starting. So what is your definition of front office?
Um, a good question. Front office, and this is particularly front office systems and staffing companies, would include functionality, would include ATS functionality, applicant tracking, CRM, and what we call ROA, which is requisition order assignment. And then, as you kind of move from front into middle, you've got other modules like onboarding, time and attendance, and there'll be then as you move into the back office, you'll have your payroll and billing components, and in middle office you might have compliance. So there's because we don't do a report on the middle office, we take some of the middle office functionality and report on it in the front office, and vice versa. When we do a back office report, we take some of the middle office functionality as it relates to back office tech.
Yeah, that
Is that
middle
clear?
area. Yeah, that middle area always blends into the others. So yeah, that makes
It
complete sense.
does. It does.
So, two directions I'm curious to go in with you thinking about the front office tech. So, first, currently, what are you seeing as the uh, not so much differentiators because I don't feel like we need to get into specific tech here, but overall, what are you seeing in the landscape right now for front office? What is most of the tech focused on? What are firms looking to get out of front office tech? Just give us your opinion.
Okay, so I mostly speak to vendors. So my perspective will be from a someone looking to procure the tech. Um, what do I need? What is it doing? So the thing I've noticed in the last couple of years is that there's been a lot of functionality effectively thrown into the tech stack to solve various problems associated with the pandemic. So when you look at things like documents, when you look at online reference checking, credentialing, a whole range of functionality that was there before, but now it became a necessity. And so these are now must-haves in the current environment, driven by the demand in the pandemic. But I think what's happened is, and certainly I've seen this over in the last updated report, there's been a real push to improve the user experience, because a lot of that functionality was put in probably without too much thought for whether it really suited the recruiter. It was really driven by necessity. So what I'm seeing is a real effort, I think, to refine and improve the functionality to make it much easier for the recruiter to use some of those applications and some of that new tech that's being deployed. So that's kind of the main thing that came out of the most recent report. Lots of companies and lots of vendors in the market really putting out new UI. And really improving what they had in place, rather than pushing new tech into it. I think that's probably the landscape at the moment.
Sure, and I agree because I'm not noticing a whole lot of revolutionary change right now with tech. I'm noticing much more of a refinement kind of period, and tiny little additions that these vendors are throwing in. Did anything? I guess obviously the pandemic changed things between the last time you did the overview and then now. But did anything stick out to you and surprise you, whether it was something that they did or did not do?
Look, nothing specifically surprised me. I think with regards to the technology in terms of functionality, but what did surprise me was how quickly some companies were able to scale with their existing technology, particularly in the healthcare field. We had
Ooh.
some companies, go from tens of millions to hundreds of millions, and many hundreds of millions of dollars in turnover in a very short period of time, without seemingly putting a lot of stress on their technology stack. So they seem to have applications in place and good foundations that enabled them to grow and extend their capabilities quite quickly. So probably that's what surprised me: the capability of some of the existing systems to deal with what was a very different environment. And we always talk about deploying technology that can scale, but often uh, uh, staffing companies don't think in terms of growing that quickly. I mean, they think of growing, but not kind of in the astronomical and exponential way it did during the pandemic. So that surprised me, how well some of these companies were able to keep the lights on when they're doubling and tripling. Their turnover on a monthly basis. I mean, that's quite some challenge, I think.
Yeah, I remembered last year, almost a year ago now, at the SIA Leadership Conference, the exec forum. I remember talking about this and how companies are doing well, and then all of a sudden, someone takes the stage and talks about their healthcare staffing, and there's something like 10x the industry averages and everything. I'm like, how in the world did you do that?
Yeah.
So, since everyone came out of the conference with that, I'm sure you saw a lot of similar stories. So you mentioned having the right kind of foundation in place to allow for that kind of growth. What sort of things do you feel like need to be in place to allow for that?
Well, I think really, foundations are important. So having applications, of course, in the cloud, where you can where you can grow your compute power without too many issues. I think integration is really important. If you have a lot of manual processes somewhere in between, between front, middle, and back office, well, that's going to be a limiting factor, because you've got to throw more people at processing timesheets or doing billing work or whatever it is. And so having a really solid integration framework in place, I think that's going to be pretty important. So the two things I mentioned: being able to scale the application so you don't have any bottlenecks, and two, having the a good integration, probably a two-way integration with this visibility from back to front office and vice versa, so that you can not only deliver to the customers, but you can also process your payroll and billing if you're in that space. And I think one more is having a good mobile presence. If you already had that in place, that was going to be pretty important because you were having to reach people without face-to-face meetings and interviews. So being able to do all of the documentation, all of the interviewing remotely was essential. And with a good mobile presence, if you had that in place already, then to scale it wasn't too much of a problem. If you had to then deploy that in the midst of that growth, that could have taken quite some time.
Yeah. You raised a good point there with the integrations. So the last interview that I did, if everyone wants to go back and look at the interview with John Bernadovich, we talked about integration a little bit and how there's kind of these two levels of integration. And I'll use the software terminology just because this is what I think most people understand. So to me, there's we'll call it Zapier level, where, hey, we've got these pre-integrations built in. If you just say, yep, I'm a subscriber to this, and yep, I'm a subscriber to that, we'll do most of the work for you. But that comes with limitations. It obviously can't do everything. It's not going to be super customized. And then you've got this other level where it takes almost like a system integrator. You need to hire some sort of contractor to come in and really tie these APIs really closely together. And I feel like a lot of people are not getting enough from the Zapier level, the just, hey, point and click, but they get overwhelmed thinking about the other level of things. Do you feel like there's a low-hanging fruit from an integration perspective that people should focus on first?
Uh, yeah, good question. Look, I think you've summarized the dilemma quite well there. To take a very straightforward integration out of the box, put it in place. Most people will see that as being pretty straightforward, and it will deliver something for you. As you start to scale, the requirements become more complex. You start to find that you need to have some logic at either end for one reason and another. You need to have two-way integration in place. You need to have fields because you're doing something specific that is not that's not available as part of the out of the box integrations. So you then start to require more and more kind of complexity around the integration. I think that the main thing for me is to make sure that if you're in the temp payroll space and you've got a growing temp base, is to have that integration between front and back office very solid, so that you're getting that everything is being done at the front office by the consultant, or most of the things, and the information is passing through, and that there's good communication between the back office to the front office, so recruiters have visibility of what's happening, and any gaps in the information that they require from the workers or applicants. So I think for me, putting that in place, and then you have a time and attendance component. If you can get good integration with the time and attendance side, and particularly two-way integration. So if you've got a requirement to work with, VMS systems, been able to get timesheets from those in India system very easily and validated, it's going to be a big advantage. So I think that probably for me, that again, that foundation part, which is really between front and back and middle, that's the focus.
And that, I feel like once you have some of those integrations in place, being able to leverage those throughout the process is going to pay serious dividends and allow for that 10x scale. Like it's the only way to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the data being easy to work with from one end to the other, and it being reliable, and it being complete, and it being really good quality, up to kind of payroll processing quality from back to front. If you've got that, it's a really good advantage, I think.
And it's something that's not only super easy to get wrong, but really rough when you do, because the other person who's getting that paycheck is looking to it down to the penny to make sure that it's 100% perfect. So yeah, that's a tough one. That's one that most people wants to get right straight from the start. So that was one. I appreciate you going into depth on that one for the front office stuff. Let's talk about the other report that you had out. Hit me with the highlights from that one.
That was the back office. So a little, quite a different environment. The back office, sorry, quite a different landscape. So not so many players, not so much requirement for your HR or recruitment tech to be integrated. So it's probably it hasn't developed at the pace that the ATS CRM environment and associated environment has. So I found that there were less players in that space. Staffing companies probably didn't change their tech so much in the back office. Um, and interestingly, there weren't so many global players. Quite difficult, for instance, if you look at the payroll space, for example, to uh, to really genuinely deliver a global payroll solution that could be configurable for each jurisdiction. So there was a mix of kind of local solutions for back office. I found more than global solutions, but some very good technology available. I think if you look at the US market, for example, if you have to process in the back office, you're looking at California being the most complex environment, and then if you look to Australia is probably California on steroids. So some of the technology coming in the back office that comes out of Australia is actually quite suitable for a more global deployment if it's rules based and flexible and can be configured for different environments. So there are some there are some good applications around for the back office, but again mostly local.
Yeah, and it makes complete sense because, like you said, California, Australia, everywhere's got their own, um, their own. I won't call them issues. What I want to, we'll say regulations. There you go.
Regulations, yeah.
Yeah, that has kept payroll individuals in fantastically lucrative roles because they have to know the ins and the outs, and they are the ones that are processing all of this stuff. I've heard a lot of interesting opinions from those that have been, the go-to payroll person to now turning over all of this to tech. It's very interesting, but I keep talking to those individuals about scale, 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 scale. Like it works when you're hiring at low volume. But what happens when you're not? How do we make sure that you're not going to work a 90-hour work week to try and keep up with everything? And it starts becoming a nightmare to think about all of the things you have to keep up with and all of the things that have to be in that tech. But what are some of the things you found that have been in those back office pieces of software, those types of features that stand out and make someone want to choose one particular piece of software over another?
I think one of the really key things has been able to to be able to configure without code a lot of the rules associated with processing payroll. So if you have a rules engine that a reasonably trained payroll person can configure to take a timesheet and calculate up a timesheet and generate a gross pay. That's really key, and there are some systems that do that very well. And you can go down to the kind of nth degree on granularity on a timesheet, and you can pick up and process that timesheet without human intervention, other than the initial configuration of the rules. So, to me, if you've got that in place, it's a really powerful part of the stack, particularly if you need to scale. So because that's a lot of where the knowledge of a payroll person goes into it. So calculating a timesheet, understanding all the rules, but almost all of those rules are configurable. So you can put them in place in the stack and get uh, an almost automated end-to-end payroll function. But it takes some
Yeah.
effort. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely, yeah. But that rules engine, I mean, that's like someone's brain in a piece of software, and it's just almost like a if-then type statement creation that you're making, and it's changing people's worlds for sure. So you are able to see across a lot of the tech space. You're interfacing with a lot of the major players. You are understanding what buyers are going to be looking for out of all of this. what are you excited about for recruiting tech in the next year or so? What's interesting to you?
It's it's really interesting to see what the AI space, what's going to happen in the AI space.
Hmm.
Everyone talks about Chat GPT,
Sure.
and a couple of years ago when I looked at the impact of AI on the systems, that's in 2021 when I did that first report. It wasn't really clear that they were adding a huge amount of benefit in any areas other than the search and match side of things. So there was you could see that there was a genuine benefit there, but nothing outside that. And then a lot of talk about GPT, and I've seen uh, some demos of uh, applications that can hold a voice conversation, an onboarding conversation or an interview end to end without deviating off track in the way that the chat bots and the voice bots had done in the past. So that was really impressive. So I'll be really interested to see how that technology then augments what a recruiter can do, and how staffing companies start to use it, because it's got numerous applications, from writing ads to enhancing resumes to compiling job specifications. So it opens up a lot of avenues, and it'll be really interesting to see, will it really make a difference. And I think probably the staffing companies that are clever about how they implement it will see some benefits and really understand what it can do. Those that might try and replace a recruiter with it, might struggle in getting the uptake.
It's really interesting that you mentioned the end-to-end interview conversations. When I will give someone an example if they wanted to go have some fun with ChatGPT. So what I did is I took the text of a job description and I put it into ChatGPT. I said, "Here's a job that I'm looking to hire for," and I just pasted it in, and it understood it. I said, "What do you think this person needs to know how to do?" And they came back with a couple little things. And then I put in the text of a resume. I said, "Here's someone who's applying for this specific job. Where do you see gaps?" And then I let it list them out. And then I said, questions could you ask to identify if this person had those skills or not? And it busted out like 5 or 6 different questions. And to me, I went, okay, this isn't replacing a recruiter, but if I had a recruiter that was fresh in seat who was just sitting down for their first month on the job, and I needed them to be able to ask intelligent questions about identifying gaps in this person's resume, that would be a game changer. And
Hmm.
it wouldn't have to actually have the conversation. Just give me the conversation prompts. And I went, ooh, there's something here.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think there is some fun that we can have with that. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to truly replace, because I haven't yet found a AI that I can have a relationship with and that can persuade me.
Hmm.
It's not to say it can't learn how to do that, but currently I feel like that's one of the gaps. But yeah, I think once that becomes more of a reality and is more in our space, you and I need to talk about that a little bit more, because that one's exciting to me.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. It's starting to be adopted in various places, and I was interested in seeing a demo of a product that had could conduct a voice conversation. So introduce so ring up someone, introduce themselves as a virtual recruiter, and go through a screening conversation with a person, with all the intricacies that people on the phone typically have, without going off track. Now that was just a couple of examples, but if you can get that enabled consistently, via AI, then it's quite a powerful tool to allow screening to be happening with candidates. You know, 24 hours. I mean, if you can ring people 24 hours, probably would be a good idea. But certainly it can take an individual recruiter and make them much more productive, by having a virtual assistant sitting alongside them.
Yeah, if I'm a recruiter at an international corporation where I could have interviews that happen when I'm not working and then show up in the morning and say, "Here's the summary of the past 10 interviews that have happened." I mean, wow.
Yeah.
That's just unreal. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for coming, Kevin, and sharing some of your insight on this. If people wanted to find more about you and your work and what you're doing, where would you like to send them?
They can go to the SIA website. All our research is there, all the information that we provide for our members, and there is some free research that's available there. But it gives a summary of basically on what we do.
Okay, I will send them there. That link will be in the description as well. Are you okay if I link people to your LinkedIn as well?
Please feel free to.
All right, perfect. We'll reach out there. If you have any other questions, you can pass them along to hello@bradowens.com, or you can just visit the website at transformrecruiting.com and put in a question there. Hope to see you on the next episode. And Kevin, thank you so much for putting time in. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me on.